Hey everyone, in today's video I'll share some tips and ideas to improve your full moon photography. And I'm currently waiting for the full moon to rise above the horizon here behind me, and hopefully I'll be able to get a cool shot of this big cheese ball in the sky. Now I'll go over my camera settings with you in a little bit, but I first want to talk about some important things that we have to keep in mind when photographing the moon. So number one is we want to make sure that the skies are clear, because obviously if it's cloudy you won't be able to see the moon. Now some clouds are not a problem, they can add an extra layer to the photo, and like right now I have some clouds in the sky and I hope they won't be at the wrong place at the wrong time. But generally you want to have the sky as clear as possible. And secondly, you want to make sure that the camera is set in manual mode, so that way you have full control over all the settings and you can set the exposure the way you need it to be. Because if you shoot in auto mode, the moon is just basically going to turn out to be this light blob in the sky and you won't be able to see any detail in the moon, and that's obviously not what you want. To photograph the moon, you ideally want to use a telephoto lens, and this is a lens that allows you to zoom in quite a bit. That way you'll be able to capture a lot of detail of the moon. So a telephoto lens is like the one I'm using here, for example, a Sony 100 to 400 millimeter, but a very common example is also the 70 to 200 millimeter, and telephoto lenses go up to even 600 millimeter or even more. And lastly, I would recommend using a tripod and a self-timer. That way you can avoid camera shake and you'll always get a perfectly sharp image. So I'll just go over my settings real quick. So I'm zoomed in at almost 300 millimeters here. I'm at an f-stop of 11, which is the recommended aperture for moon photography, and currently at ISO 125 and a shutter speed of 1/20. Now the ISO and the shutter speed will probably change depending on how we lose the light. But so far these are the settings, and yeah, I'm just waiting for the moon to rise, and hopefully if my calculations are correct, it should rise here just besides the tower. So yeah, now we just wait for that moon to come and hopefully get this shot. Okay, so it's actually the next day now, and I've had the chance to look over some of the photos from last night, and I'll share my favorite one with you in a bit. But I just want to talk a bit more about some ideas and tips for moon photography. So idea number one is to not always photograph the moon at night. Now it is cool to get a photo like this, where you see the moon in all of its detail and you get a very clear photo of the moon. But all of these photos are going to look more or less the same. It's a lot more interesting to photograph the moon during sunset or blue hour, so you can add a bit more interest to the photo and also add a little bit more color in there. Like this one, for example, from Norway, where the sun was setting and the moon was rising. So you could see the landscape and there's some people in there. So there's a lot more going on and it adds a bit more atmosphere to the entire photo. Or this one, for example, where the moon was actually setting while the sun was rising, and you have these beautiful glowing peaks that just fill the frame a lot more and make just for an overall more interesting photo. And that actually brings me with idea number two, and that is to photograph the moon with a landscape or with a subject. So again, it's all about not just capturing the moon, but capturing it with something else to add a bit more interest to the image. So again, this will work better during blue hour or during sunset, because then you'll just have less of a crazy dynamic range to work with. And that's also what I did for my photo last night. So as you can see, I aligned the moon with the building here, adding a little bit more interest to the entire image instead of it just being a photo of the moon. Now I'd love to know what your thoughts are on this photo, so let me know in the comments down below. And lastly, I have one more top tip to share with you, and that is to plan. Now for sure you're gonna get lucky sometimes and be at the right spot at the right time to photograph the moon in a cool landscape or with a subject, but usually that's not gonna happen. So that's why you always have to plan your moon photography shoot. The moon is always moving, so it's always rising in a different location. So if you want to get a specific shot, you're gonna have to plan that. Now, it's not always easy to do this, so I suggest using an app like, for example, PhotoPills to help you with all of this planning. So that was it for today's full moon photography video. I hope you liked it and I hope you learned something. If you did, make sure to leave the video a like and subscribe to the channel for more photography related videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye!